tricky like that, but it was,
Well,
yeah,
we used to have parakeets, the little budgie type parakeets, and yeah, they'll
yeah,
mock anything. And I
yeah.
know the one we had, he would mock the toilet filling. And
Really?
one night, my uncle called wanting to come over, and we told him, well, we'll only be here till 5 o'clock, but we have to leave at 5. And so he came over. It got 5 o'clock, and he's making no thing to leave. And of course, my mother and dad and Frank and I were all sitting right there in the room, and he knew nobody else was there. And all of a sudden, something said, "It's 5 o'clock." He said, "Who said that?" Well, it was the bird, and it was 5 o'clock. And so he left, and we got to go ahead and be on
Wow.
time where we were supposed to be. But yeah, they pick up any and everything.
Huh. Well,
Okay, it's back on. So,
is Abel there? There he is.
hold on just a minute, Abel. Where's my stuff?
How you doing, Abel?
Pretty good. Thank you, Brett. That was very good.
Amen. Thank you.
I begin to realize in the Bible it says about so and so begot so and they lived so long. It's a
Amen.
lot of numbers. So I'm learning quite a bit.
Amen.
Hey, Abel, you want to read that?
Okay. First, I'd like to welcome everybody, and I've noticed that we got Chris there. We're going to be reading Psalms 95, 1 through 7. It says, "Oh, come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. For the Lord is great God and a great King above all gods. In his hand are the deep places of the earth. The strength of the hills is his also. The sea is his, and he made it. His hands formed the dry land. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand." And also a special day today, as Brent was telling us, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy maid servant, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the Sabbath day. And wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Are we ready, Sandy?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Happy Sabbath. This is going to be a Sabbath school, so I'm going to need you to help me read. And second, I need your opinions. If you got something that you learned about what we're going to be speaking, share it with us. I'm pretty sure you don't want to hear me all the time, just my advice or my opinions. I like to hear everybody's, even if it's different than mine.
We kind of lost you, Abel. Your voice is going very low.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is it better? Okay. Okay, everybody, this is going to be a Sabbath school. Help me read, and also I want your opinions as we go through it. This is a message for the angels. It's in First Corinthians. Paul's talking about this. First Corinthians chapter 11. So let's begin. We have Violet.
Violet, you're muted.
Now I plead with you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you all speak the same thing, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. For it has been declared to me concerning you, my brethren, by those of Chloe's household, that there are contentions among you.
You know, the first thing we learned about Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, is that Paul had a hard time with these individuals. There was a lot he had to correct. There was stuff they needed to forget, stuff they needed to learn. So he gave them the commandments, statutes, judgments of the Lord. But he also gives them great counsel, godly counsel. So that's what we're going to do today. He gave them some counsel that they need to really look into. And we're going to look at two verses in chapter 11 of 1 Corinthians. There's two verses that we need to pay close attention to it. Here's the first one.
And you should imitate me just as I imitate Christ. I am so glad that you always keep me in your thoughts and that you are following the teachings I passed on to you. But there is one thing I want you to know. The head of every man is Christ. The head of women is man, and the head of Christ is God.
So Paul puts it very simple, very direct. In heaven and earth together, it's the Father, who's the head of the Messiah, Christ, who's the head of man, who is the head of woman. So you got the Father, you got the Son, man, and now you got woman. That's very easy to understand. This is the authority that's in heaven. But there's something interesting in verse 10. It's the second one we need to study.
For this reason, a woman should have a covering on her head. This shows she respects man. This is for the angels to see also.
You know, it's interesting what Paul says, that the women should have, when she's worshiping, praying, and so on, should have a covering. But this is for the angels to see. It's a special message for the angels. So what could that be? What message could possibly be for the angels by a woman wearing a covering? Well, as we continue, we're going to look at something interesting. It says for the angels to see. What angels? The righteous angels or the angels that fell? Same. You know, my belief that studying this, I believe it's for both of them. It's for the angels that fell and for the righteous angels that did not fall. Something happened in heaven. And the angels that fell and the righteous angels were involved in this. And it's something they need to recognize by this message that Paul's giving them.
A man dishonors his head if he covers his head while praying or prophesying.
Before we head to the woman covering, we're going to continue verse 4. And it says a man dishonors his head. Really? I never knew that. I always saw many religions having a head cover. And they all worship. They all prayed. But they all had their heads covered. And they do that today. But as I read the counsel of Paul, he said that a man dishonors his head if he covers his head while praying. The verse we just read that says that Christ is the head of man. Is he saying that man dishonors Christ if he covers Christ while praying or prophesying? Or is he talking about a literal head covering? Let's continue.
But a woman dishonors her head if she prays or prophesies without a covering on her head, for this is the same as shaving her head. Yes, if she refuses to wear a head covering, she should cut off all her hair. But since it is shameful for a woman to have her hair cut or her head shaved, she should wear a covering.
You know, back in the time of Germany, some of the women had their hair cut. And this was they say this was because these women helped the Germans out. And they went against their own country. So some of the women after the war had their heads shaved. And if you, us ourselves, human beings, if we were in Germany at that time and we saw these women that had their heads shaved, we knew something was not right with them. They were traitors. Just by looking at them without any hair, we knew they had done something wrong. They had betrayed their country. So when the angels look at the women praying without having a covering, it means something to them. We're going to learn what Paul's saying here.
A man should not wear anything on his head when worshiping, for man is made in God's image and reflects God's glory, and woman reflects his glory. For the first man didn't come from woman, but the first woman came from man.
I always saw the Jewish gentleman with a head covering every time they were praying. And I always wondered, am I missing something? You know, is it biblical to have a covering when we're praying? So I searched the Bible and I couldn't find it. I go, I wonder why they wear coverings. Well, as I was digging, I kind of thought that it was more like a tradition, according to some of the readings out there.
The custom of covering one's head is based on custom, a minhag, that first appeared during the rabbinic period, roughly from the beginning of the Common Era to 500 CE. While there are no references to this in the Torah and no explicit statements in Jewish legal sources about covering the head, among some Jews, this custom has taken on the force of religious law. Among Orthodox Jews, men commonly wear a kippah, a yarmulke in Yiddish, or cover their heads at all times.
So according to this, it's more tradition. Maybe that's why I couldn't find nothing in the Bible about it.
Harold?
Can I say something? Can I say something, please?
Yes.
Okay. I mentioned this is Mark. I'm a Jewish Adventist. I do, when I attend frequent services or when we have activities, I do wear a yarmulke, as it's a Yiddish word, or kippah in Hebrew. That is a neutral tradition. It's not. It is. You're correct. It is not found in the Torah or or in the Bris Hadashah. That's the New Testament. But that is part of our people. That is the idea is that it is like being under the authority of Hashem or God. That's what it means. It's not just blocking some transmission or anything like that. It's a symbol of respect that we're before Hashem. So that's how I say it. So it's a neutral thing. It is not obligatory for all Jewish males to wear. Some do, some don't. I choose to do it because that's part of in my family tradition. So I just want to make it just such it's neutral. You know, we're not trying to follow just rabbinic. It's just, you know, if we feel led by the, you know, by the Spirit, that's what I do when I'm praying. So I just wanted to clarify that for you. Does that help you understand that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Kippah is the Hebrew word for the skull cap traditionally worn by Jewish men. It is also called a yarmulke or kopel in Yiddish. Kippah are worn at the apex of a person's head. After the Star of David, they are probably one of the most recognized symbols of Jewish identity. Ultimately, the decision about whether or not to wear a kippah comes down to personal choice and the customs of the community an individual belongs to. Religiously speaking, wearing kippah is not obligatory, and there are many Jewish men who do not wear them at all.
In addition to wearing a kippah, many men also wear a hat when praying. Donning a hat is viewed as an act of respect as recently as a few decades ago. When men went out in public, they would make sure to wear a hat. A hat is also reminiscent of the turban worn by the priests during the temple service.
Now we get to number 10. And this verse we're gonna look at quite a bit for the rest of the service.
And man was not made for woman, but woman was made for man. For this reason, and because the angels are watching, a woman should wear a covering on her head to show she is under authority.
So what's the reason Paul is saying that a woman should wear a covering? To show the angels that she's under authority. Now, what would this have to do with angels? You know, the angels are watching each and every one of us. They're here on earth, going up and down, and also the evil angels are watching. So what kind of a message would wearing a covering on a woman's head could that woman give to the angels? Well, we know what happened in heaven. Something to do with authority.
And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
What was that war about? Authority. Remember that? What Satan wanted, it had to do with authority. Now, when the angels look at the woman and they look at the woman and she's beneath man, in other words, it's the Father, he said, then it's the Son, and then man, and last, it's the woman. So when the angels look at the woman and she has a covering, and they see the woman is content where she's at. Angels should be content where they're at, and not to be like the Father or the Son, as it happened with Lucifer. This is the message that Paul is trying to give through women wearing covering to the angels to see that the women are happy where they're at, satisfied that they're under men.
Lucifer, as the anointed cherub, had been highly exalted. He was greatly loved by the heavenly beings, and his influence over them was strong. God's government included not only the inhabitants of heaven, but of all the worlds that he had created. And Satan thought that if he could carry the angels of heaven with him in rebellion, he could also carry the other worlds.
You know, it's interesting that all the angels loved him. All of them. Even the ones that didn't follow him loved him greatly. So when they saw Lucifer wanting to move up in rank, and the Father and the Son did not let him, they kind of wondered, why not? Well, through the woman, the angels are being shown that you need to be content where God puts you. This is what was going on in heaven. Lucifer wanted to be like God. Since he couldn't do it in heaven, guess what? He's doing it here on earth. He's putting three in one. And this was the battle that we have in authority in heaven, which the angels fought over.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north.
How you are fallen from heaven, O shining star, son of the morning. You have been thrown down to the earth, you who destroyed the nations of the world. For you said to yourself, I will ascend to heaven and set my throne above God's stars. I will preside on the mountain of the gods, far away in the north.
This is something interesting what he wanted. He wanted to be on top of God's, all the stars, above all the angels. You know, this is, if Lucifer was allowed to do what he wanted to do in heaven, we would have seen strange images in heaven. A lot of idols, a lot of images that he had brought to earth. In fact, there's a story here in the Bible we're going to look at in a little bit where he wanted to be in the most holy place above the ark. We'll look at that story in just a while. But this is what would have happened if the Father and the Son would allow Lucifer in heaven to be a god, to call himself a god. It would have been just like the Trinity we got today. It would have been the Father is not the Son, the Father is not Lucifer, but the Father's God. The Son is not the Father, the Son is not Lucifer, but the Son is God. And then we would have Lucifer is not the Father, Lucifer is not the Son, but Lucifer is God. Incredible. He couldn't do it in heaven. He's doing it here. Let's continue.
I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High.
You know, images that we don't see here when we look at the sanctuary, everything in heaven would have been changed by Lucifer if he was allowed to be a god. Everything he's done here on earth would have been done in heaven.
Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, This is the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms.
Now, I wanted to ask everybody, why is he called a man? Lucifer. Okay, well, I'll give you my opinion in a little bit. He is called a man.
You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you: carnelian, chrysolite, and emerald, topaz, onyx, and jasper, lapis lazuli, turquoise, and beryl. Your settings and mountings were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared.
So he was prepared perfect. This is why all the angels loved him.
You were anointed as the guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God. You walked among the fiery stones. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till wickedness was found in you.
Through your widespread trade, you were filled with violence and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the Mount of God, and I expelled you, garden cherub, from among the fiery stones, the guardian cherub from among the fiery stones.
So if we would let Satan take over, guess what? When we open the curtain from the holy place to the most holy, we would see some strange images. It's always has to be 3 or 4.
Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth. I made a spectacle of you before kings.
It says, then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. What did they fight about? Authority. Satan wanted more authority. He wanted equal authority as the Son and the Father. Interesting. Now, it says that war broke out, so he was cast out. Well, guess where he was cast out to? The earth. So who's fighting Satan now, and for what reason? It's authority again.
Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the excuse me, inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time.
That war has come down to us, guys. And from the beginning of creation, the Lord's people have always been fighting against Satan.
Josiah had all the articles made for Asherah and Baal burned, and the idolatrous priests were done away with. The Asherah pole was also set on fire, and its ashes spread over the graves of the common people, and the quarters where women did weaving for the goddesses were torn down.
So if you notice, it's always been battle. God's people has always battled against Satan in everything he's trying to do here on earth. But you know, he's done a great job here. He has destroyed so much of the Bible teaching, so much of God's commandments, so much of idol worship. He's done an excellent work down here. So even us today, we're fighting against this demon that wants to have authority. Even us today, we're fighting against the Trinity. It's the same fight. So where did this pagan belief come from? Well, we know that before it came into the Christian church, the Lord's church, it went out through the whole world. The whole world came out with 3 this, 3 that, Trinity here, Trinity there. But how did it come into the Christian church? Well, there's only one church that brought it in. We know that it was through the Roman Catholic Church. Somehow, Satan got a foothold inside that church that should have been the church that Christ left. And little by little, the Trinity started coming into this church. And then from this church, it started going to all the Protestant churches here in America and throughout the world.
Catholic Doctrine on the Holy Trinity by Father John A. Hardin. The mystery of the Holy Trinity is the most fundamental of our faith. On it, everything else depends, and from it, everything else derives. Hence, the Church's constant concern to safeguard the revealed truth that God is one in nature and 3 in persons.
Interesting. This is what Paul is trying to teach the angels. that the angels, and he's using the women as having the covering to show the angels you need to be happy. Or yet, not like Satan, who was not happy, even though he was perfect. He was created without sin. He was sinless, yet he wasn't happy. This is what we see throughout the world before it came into Christianity. We always saw a bunch of symbols that were very confusing. Like this gentleman has got 4 or 5 heads. This lady in the middle has got 4 arms. You know, this is not the image of the Lord. When Adam and Eve were created, they were created in the image. I don't think they had 4 heads or 6 arms. This is something we would see if Satan was left to do what he wanted. This is what we would have seen in heaven. Strange objects. Like this lady here. One of her hands, she's got a fork. Looks like it's what they used to show that the devil has. She's holding the keys that represent the keys of heaven. She's got the cup, which Christ gave to the disciples. This is my blood that I shed for you. She's got the water of life in her hand. She's got the sword. And then she's got that hatchet that will chop down the tree that doesn't produce. You know, everything that's supposed to be Christ is always given to somebody else. So this is what happened to the war in heaven. Satan had to be thrown out. So now we're in that battle. And a lot of people have accepted the Trinity, not realizing that it is Satan's way of achieving authority. So what happened to the, yes?
But besides her hands, if you noticed, her hair was snakes.
Yes, many demons, many devils. So what happened to the world here? We lost the battle. The Trinity came in. And what did that bring in?
Asherah.
Go ahead, Vi.
No, it's your turn.
Oh, there's a lot of confusion around this deity. She could be the mother of the gods. In some incarnations, she was the goddess of sexuality or of the mountains.
The people of the Assyrian city of Sepharvaim were said to burn their children as sacrifices to the god.
Can you imagine what he would have brought to heaven if Lucifer would have been let loose up there? If he would have got the right to do what he wanted? Strange objects we would have seen.
Jeremiah 19:5. Baal's worshippers are said to burn their sons alive as a sacrifice to appease the deity.
Yes, all this has come in because Satan had been given authority here on earth. Too many people are following him.
1 Kings 11:7. Despite being held up as a paragon of virtue, King Solomon actually built a sanctuary to Shamash, thought of as a more move to please his Moabite wife.
The demon Beelzebub, whom Jesus links to Satan in the book of Matthew, is a modification of one of Baal's names.
Here's the story about Satan wanting to be right next to the Ark of the Covenant.
The Philistines captured the Ark of the Covenant and put it in the temple of Dagon. In the morning, the statue had fallen over face down in front of the ark. The next morning, the same thing had happened, and the statue's head and hands had broken off. The worshippers of Dagon were justifiably freaked out. So they moved the ark from town to town, but everywhere it resided, the people developed tumors. Eventually, the Philistines returned the cursed ark to Israel.
Yes, in heaven. He wanted to be next to the Ark of the Covenant. Can you imagine what he would have done if the Father and the Son would have led him? Interesting way, interesting outcome in heaven.
In the Bible, El is the supreme God of the Canaanites, yet is identified with Yahweh. In fact, he could very well have been the original conception of the Hebrew God. It's right there in the El of the name Israel, which is usually translated as he who struggles with God.
Interesting concept that Satan would have. For this reason, a woman should have a covering on her head. This shows she respects man. This is for the angels to see also. So when we see this covering, what do we think about us here on earth when we see a woman dressed like this? Well, we know that something's wrong. She lost her husband. Maybe she lost a family member, but something is not right. This is not the time to have a party or anything. Something bad has happened in this woman's life. Just by looking at her, we know that. This is what we look at and we know exactly what happened. That's the way Paul wants the angels. When they look at a woman praying and she has her head covered, this shows the angels that she is happy where she's at. Father, Son, man, and woman.
Wearing, wearing black at funerals seems like a no-brainer choice, right? Black is a sad, gloomy, doomy, gloomy shade. But if you go to Japan, they wear white for funerals.
Oh, really? Well, we wear white for weddings. Maybe it's the same thing. I don't know.
I don't know, but in Japan, they wear white for funerals.
Is this the head covering that Paul's talking about? Would this be something the angels could see? For this reason, and because the angels are watching, a woman should wear a covering on her head to show she is under authority. Could this be the head covering? Again, a different version. For this reason, the woman ought to have a sign of authority on her head for the angel's sake. What about this covering? Not only your head, but the whole body. What kind of covering was Paul talking about? One more time. It is for this reason that a woman ought to have authority over her own head because of the angels.
Judge in yourselves. Is it comely that a woman should pray to God uncovered? Does not even nature itself teach you that man, if he have long hair, it is a dishonor to him? But woman, if she have long hair, it is glory to her. For the long hair is given to her in lieu of a veil.
So is Paul talking about the hair that the woman needs to have covering, or is it a hat? Is it the hair or the hat?
Decide for yourselves. Is it right for a woman to pray to God without something on her head? Even nature itself teaches you that wearing long hair is shameful for a man, but wearing long hair is a woman's honor. Long hair is given to the woman to cover her head. Some people may still want to argue about this, but we as the churches of God don't accept that what those people are doing.
Yeah, I wonder if Paul was talking about the hair being a covering, not an actual head or a blanket or.
Decide this for yourselves. Is it right for a woman to pray to God without something on her head? Even nature itself teaches you that wearing long hair is shameful for a man, but wearing long hair is a woman's honor. Long hair is given to the woman to cover her head. Some people may still want to argue about this, but I would add that neither we nor the churches of God accept any other practice.
Interesting.
What does that say about men? And the pictures Mrs. White had of Jesus, that he had white hair that came down curly on his shoulders. Just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, I never saw that before.
But if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given her for a covering. But if any man seem to be contentious, we have no such custom, neither the churches of God.
Another question I would have is, what's considered long hair? To the shoulder, all the way to the back? You know, Paul doesn't mention anything about that. Just says long hair.
Also, pictures of Ellen White show her with her hair up in a bun and something like a doily covering the bun. So how does that fit into all of this too?
Just what they wore, just like people do now.
I think Paul was talking about when a woman's in church praying. But if you're walking around, it might be different. I don't know.
Follow my way of thinking as I follow Christ. I think you have done well because you always remember me and have followed the things I taught you. I want you to know that Christ is the head of every man. The husband is the head of his wife. God is the head of Christ.
So if you notice, it's the Father, Son, man, then woman. But the woman is content where she's at. And this is for the angels to see. That Satan should have been content where he was and not being like the Son or the Father. He should have been content being with the rest of the angels. Paul said it's the Father, then the Son, then man, then woman. So Paul writes that it's the Father, Son, man, woman. But Lucifer says no. Father, the Son, it's me, Lucifer, then man, and then woman. And he gives us the reasons. He conquered men. Men is under his power today. So he should be over men. And that's what he brought out the Trinity. But I got a question. What about the angels? Where do the angels stand? Are they under man or above man? It's not mentioned. But the Bible does give us a clue here.
And I, John, saw these things and heard them. And when I had heard and seen, I fell down to worship before the feet of the angel which showed me these things. Then saith he unto me, See thou do it not, for I am thy fellow servant, and of thy brethren the prophets, and of them which keep the sayings of this book, worship God.
Yeah, the angels and man are equal. Man is not over the angels. The angels are not over men. They're fellow servants. This is why Satan was called a man. He's equal to man. He's not higher than a man. He's more powerful than us here on earth, but he is not over us, and we are not over him. We are equal. In fact, we're told that we're going to be like the angels.
Jesus replied, You are in error because you do not know the scriptures or the power of God. At the resurrection, People will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven.
That's going to be something I want to see. When a husband and wife walk in heaven, they're not going to be husband and wife anymore. They're going to be like the angels. It's going to be interesting how that's going to feel, how that's going to look.
But among the Lord's people, women are not independent of men, and men are not independent of women. For although the first woman came from man, every other man was born from a woman, and everything comes from God.
You know, it's interesting the way Paul says it's the Father, the Son, man, and then women. And even women that seem to be at the lowest part, eventually they're all even. They're all the same. We don't look at the angels and say, well, they're lower than us. No, they're equal. Men and women are equal.
Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh.
Yeah, that's why Satan should have been content of what he had. He had it all. Eternal life, no sin, yet he gave it up.
Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered.
There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus.
You know, I was thinking about the angels and men. There's a verse in Peter that says that the woman is here for two reasons. To show the angels that she's content where she's at, and also to have an opportunity to save men. I want you to notice what Peter says.
Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives.
If you notice that it says if their husbands do not obey the word, they can be brought in by their wives, by the conduct of their wives, as Paul has shown them. It says, for this reason, a woman should have a covering on her head. This shows she respects man. And second, it is for the angels to see also. So a woman has a very interesting witnessing work ahead of her.
If we take a look at ourselves, each human is made up of a mind, a body, and a soul, and yet we are still only one person. A fire has flames, heat, and light, but yet it is still just one fire. When you hear a person's speech, you are hearing three things: his words, his thoughts, and his voice, yet it is still one speech. God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, three persons, yet one God in Trinity, the Holy Trinity.
You know, it sounds very, very nice, but it's not biblical. It's just like the Sunday worship. You know, we're told that we honor Sunday because of the resurrection of Christ. That's why we observe Sunday and not the Sabbath. You see, in the Bible, we're told about Christ, for he is not the God of the dead, which he was dead on Sabbath, but he's the God of the living. The resurrection Sunday. This is why we keep Sunday and not the Sabbath. He's the God of the living, not the dead. You know, people try to make the Trinity and Sunday worship in their own way of observing it, but none of this is biblical. So, in these last days, we need to stay biblical, what God says, and not what we try to change everything around. So with that, I want to thank everybody for reading. Is there anything anybody wants to mention before we close?
That was
Thank
very
you,
good.
Abel.
I do want to remind people that there was a group in the Bible. I don't know where these verses were because I don't know, but when Paul was talking and he was kind of harsh against women, a lot of that was because he was preaching to a church that was being run by women, and that wasn't right.
Yes. Even the men, he cautioned because they were talking in tongues. So he went after the men and he went after the women.
Right.
Thank you,
Something
Abel.
else I heard
Thank you.
was one of the reasons why they wanted the younger women to cover themselves was so that when they were on their way to church, the men wouldn't be having googly eyes towards them, because there was a lot of heathen stuff going on back then, and they would want to take those women for themselves. But if they were covered, then everybody thought they were married or something. And so I don't know how true that is, but it was to
I don't
protect
think
them from the googly eyes. So
Yes.
But that would be covering the whole face and everything. This is just talking about the head. I don't know. Anyway, thank you very much, Abel. It was-
Abel, I got a question on this last picture here. Brings up the same thing you started with. All these men have their heads covered.
Yes.
People put on these prayer shawls, and it seems to me what you started with, it was not the way to do it. You're not supposed to cover your head, but for some reason, these prayer shawls seem to be a way that a lot of people cover their heads when they pray.
Well, I think this here picture was taken from the Wailing Wall. The Wailing Wall, if you've been there, there's one section for men and there's one section for women. These are probably all women with their head covered. They are to the right, and the men are on the left or the north side.
Yeah, and if I remember right, that large bush is over the women's part.
That's
But
over
I
the
could
women's
be
part.
wrong because it's been too many years ago.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't on the women's side when I was there. I was on the men's side, and there was no bush over it.
I was thinking that large bush was on the women's side.
Yeah, probably is.
Anyway, it's just a picture and it's
Just a picture.
thank you, Abel.
This is Mark. If I can say one thing, you mentioned about the prayer shawl. We call it in Hebrew a tallis. Tallis is spelled Tallis. In Numbers 15, there was an actual mitzvah or commandment in there about fringes or something that's considered holy and all. And that's another discussion for another time. So all the tallises have on their corners, the four corners of the tallis, which is the cloth covering, have fringes. That's what we call it, or that's considered holy as such. And that's why for men, that's particularly, and I wear one as well sometimes. So I just wanted to make mention, well, on that basis, where that comes from, unlike the yarmulke or the kippah, which is not found in the Torah at all, or the scriptures, this one is actually, this article of Jewish clothing is actually found in there for men. I just wanted to